Hey guys, thanks for coming back. And for those of you that subscribe, I appreciate that as well. Real quick, a couple people have asked me for the source code. I just want to remind you that my source code can be found on my GitHub. It is kind of arranged in a funny way, but I will show you where to find this specific source code in just a second once I get to the coding. Also, somebody else commented directly to me about whether or not I just record these straight away without editing. The answer is yes. So it's usually just a one and done. And the first one that I create is the one that gets uploaded as well. So if these feel like a rough cut, it's because I'm not really here to try and make any kind of a profit or anything off of this. I just want to share my code. So hopefully you enjoy that format. And if not, I'm sorry. But hopefully you'll also at least find these a little bit informative. All right, so with this, I told you I'd come back to the escape room program that I made in the last video. And so here we are. We're going to actually look at that escape room interface just a little bit more in detail. So let's take a look at the code. Just as a quick reminder, what I did was I made an escape room, a very rough program that ran through a series of props, a dresser, a cabinet, and a lamp, and it used events from each one of those classes to let the next prop know that it was finished and ready to go. And like, I guess the main thing here was that I wanted it to mimic kind of like an actual escape room if you've ever done one before. So you can walk into the room and you can interact with any of these things that you want to, the dresser, the cabinet, or the lamp. But if one of them, if they're like in a particular order, like for instance, if you have to do the cabinet before you can do the dresser, then it won't, in this program, it won't let you interact with the dresser until the cabinet's been completed, and likewise for the lamp as well. So if we run the program and take a look at it, it should look something like this. There we go. It's asking us which prop we want to try. And so I've got an option between props 1, 2, and 3, which is the cabinet, the dresser, and the lamp. So if I go to the dresser, that's number 2, it tells me that the dresser is not active, so I can't interact with it. So what I've got to do first is go to the cabinet, and it activates the cabinet. And again, this is very simple. So once the cabinet is activated, then the dresser is activated. Now I can go back to the dresser, and I can input a code for the dresser, which in this case is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the correct code, and then it activates the lamp, and now I can go to the lamp and try that one out. And I can go back to the other ones if I want to. I'm just going to say no for this. I can go back to the other props if I want to, but they've already been activated. Like for instance, the dresser, I can't go back and put in the code again because it's been completed. And if you've ever been to a regular escape room, you know that once you finish a prop, unlock a lock, or interact with something in some way, it's pretty much done. You don't have to go back to it. All right, but the whole point of this video now, let me escape out of this. The whole point of this video is to show you how what I did was basically made an interface for these events. And I made that interface out of a separate class called class passer. And what it does is it passes an object of that particular class to the class that I'm calling, and then it passes that object back. Right. So the class passer, you'll notice it uses just the generic object. It's not any particular type of class here. And it just passes it in a private set public get. And once it gets passed back to the main program, that's where I extract from the event what that original class was. Now, what that requires me to be able to do is understand which class is being passed back and forth. But what that doesn't require me to do is have each one of the classes know what any of the other ones are doing or know which ones are related to it. So for instance, the very first one to pick is the class, or is the cabinet. And when the cabinet passes the dresser to it, I'm basically telling the cabinet, all right, this is the class that you're going to be sending back to me to let me know that you finished, and I'm going to start that next object, that next class. So for the cabinet, when I start it, I go c.start, that's going to come over here, and I'm going to pass the dresser to it. But once it gets passed into class passer, you'll notice it gets converted into just a generic object. No big deal right there. And as it's all going through the cabinet here, it is just a generic object. So the cabinet here has no idea that a dresser is in CP. All it has is an object that it's passing back and forth. And then when the event finishes, it fires off its its final event. Right here, it passes that CP object back to the main program. Since the main program, the cabinet finished object, or the cabinet finished event, is subscribed to cabinet completed method down here. When cabinet completed gets basically fired off, the CP object is passed to it. Remember, this is a generic object right now. And then I know that inside that CP object, because it's coming from the cabinet, is going to be a dresser. So I just cast it back into a dresser object. So dresser D equals, and then in parentheses here, dresser, and then cp.class to pass. So this is calling the class to pass, which is a generic object. I'm telling it, hey, it's a dresser, and I want to let you know that dresser D is going to equal that object. And then from there, I can call d.activate. What's beautiful about this, and I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but what's beautiful about this is that I can create the dresser object up here, and then I can pass that same dresser object all around. So whatever I do to the dresser object that I made here at the very beginning, that same thing is going to happen down here as well. I'm not making a new object or anything like that, a new dresser, so I don't have like a billion dressers just hanging around in my memory. I've got one dresser object. It gets converted to a generic object here, and then it sends back, and I get converted back to a dresser object where I can call d.activate, which will now activate the dresser right here. All right. Now, the reason I said this is kind of like an interface is because I can rearrange these all I want. If I want to put the dresser as the thing that the lamp activates and the cabinet as the thing the dresser activates, like completely reverse these, I can do that. And all I got to do is change these here, change this D to a C, and change this L to a, I don't know, oh, that would make any sense. Change the C to an L, and then we'll change the L to a D. There we go. And then I can change and leave that as, or change that to a C. There we go. And then down here, I just need to make sure that I make those changes as well. So for instance, when the dresser gets completed, then the cabinet is going to get activated. Right? So what I'm doing is I'm passing in a cabinet object this time. So instead of this dresser.d or dresser D, I would say cabinet C equals cabinet cp.class to pass. There we go. And I can just comment this out. All right. And we'll change that to C. Now, right now, cabinet doesn't have an activate method, and that's another thing that needs to be fixed here, because in order for this to be truly like an interface, every single class has to have the exact same methods within it. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second with that too. So let me get rid of this change here, and maybe adding a class will actually explain it a little bit better. And this is as much for my edification as it is for yours. So if I can explain it to myself, then maybe that means you're getting it too, which is cool. All right, so anyways, what I want to do is I want to make another prop, all right? So I'm going to, over here, my Solution Explorer, go down here, Lesson 21. And by the way, for those of you wondering, in my GitHub, if you find Solution CS Mosh Advanced, this is based off of Mosh Hamadami's advanced course that's up on Udemy, and you can find some of the lessons on YouTube as well. I do the whole thing. It's really awesome. If you're looking for like advanced topics in C#, get yourself ready for like a technical assessment for a job interview, this is the one to do it. It's really good. But anyway, so here in lesson 21, props and events, that's what this one is. That's what this whole program is called. I'm going to go ahead and right click, and I'm going to say, whereas I always miss it, there we go, add, and I'm going to say a new class. And I'm going to make this into a door. We're going to say that it's a door that's locked, and I want to open that door up, right? So I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to try to. There we go. And I'm going to split it so that we can see a whole bunch of things. There we go. Perfect. Right. So because, like I said, this is going to be like an interface, I want to make sure that all of the things that are in each one of these classes ends up here. All right. So I've got a class door. So I'm going to come over here to my program first, and I'm going to say door. Let's call it DR for door. It's more like doctor, but whatever. Equals new door. There we go. All right, so I've made a new door. All right, so in my door class, I'm going to have a couple important things. First of all, I want to have an event. And that event is going to be, well, I want to have an event handler, I should say. So I want to have an event handler, and that event handler is going to it's going to pass a class passer basically back and forth. And I'm going to call this event handler, let's say door finished. There we go. All right. And then I want to be just like my lamp over here on this side. I just pointed at my screen as if you can see that. I'm going to say that's going to be a private bool, and we're going to call that finished. And we're going to say that it is false for right now. And then I want a private bool, and say active. And we're going to also call that one false too. All right. And then here we're going to have a constructor of door. And actually, no. You know what? I don't want to have a constructor. We don't need that. I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and make a public void. We're going to have a start method, and that's going to be taking my class passer, and we're just going to call it CP for purposes. And in here is going to be just the door logic. I'm going to keep this real simple for right now, just so that it doesn't get all crazy, and more importantly, the video doesn't go too long, which it probably already is. And then down here, what's important is I want to have a public activate. I want to have an activate. So every single one of these classes needs to have an activate so that I can call it. So I'm going to have a public void. And that activate method is going to basically, we're just going to say console dot write line. Oops. I'm having a hard time here. There we go. We're going to say door is open. And this will be mimicking basically like maybe you finish the lamp and then that opens the door. That's it. So there's no special logic that needs to go here. We're just going to say it is open. And then we're going to say active equals true. There we go. And that's going to be it. So if I start the door, then it would do something here. But in this case, we're just going to go ahead and activate the door. We're going to open it up. All right. And so what that means is now what I can do, I should say over here, I'm going to just bring this right over here so it's with the rest of these. I'm going to try to at least. There we go. Computer's tripping. And in my program now, I'm going to add my door. Okay. But I'm going to also say dr dot, let's say, well, actually, before I want to even do that so I don't get a whole bunch of red lines screaming at me, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make a special method. This is going to be private static void door opened. And this is going to basically be what my event handler calls. So it's going to pass the class passer, the CP, okay, whatever class that happens to be. And we're just going to leave it at that, all right? Now, here, this is where it gets a little complicated, but that's okay. We can do complicated, no big deal. So I'm going to, you didn't even notice I cut, did you? I totally cut the video right there. It's all good. All right, so, and this is getting way longer than I anticipated, but now I'm too deep into it. Pot committed, can't do anything about it. All right, so now I was down here. All right, we've already got a door opened. Perfect. All right, so let's see what we got going on here. Okay, so I want to go ahead and say, let's see. Well, I don't have a lamp one, but I mean, I guess I could. Let's see, dr dot door finished plus equals, and we're gonna say door opened. Boom. There we go. All right. We might as well actually add a lamp one here too. So here's where it actually gets not tricky actually. This is where the beauty of the program comes out. So up until this point right now, what was going on was the lamp was the last thing to be passed, or the lamp was the last thing to be finished. If I put these back to where they were, cabinet activated the dresser activated the lamp, and then the lamp didn't activate anything. So all I did was I passed it 0. And if you look down here, if there is this is just a simple prop completed thing or whatever, then if I pass it to 0, then basically it's finished, okay? But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this. First, I'm going to add in another else if, so else if, and then this is going to be user prop choice equals 4, and that's going to be dr dot start. Now that doesn't actually do anything, and I'm going to still pass it a new class passer. But here's the deal, since the door is now going to be the last thing, I'm going to pass it a 0. And that's going to be the end, all right? Over here, because the lamp is now going to activate the door, what I'm going to do is, instead of passing it 0, since it's not going to be the last thing, I'm going to pass it the door, the DR. All right. And now I'm going to come down here to the lamp. The lamp is now completed. And in order to make sure that the lamp completes and then activates the door, I'm going to say here, okay, here's my CP object, the class passer. All right. And so what's happening is the lamp is now passing the door. The lamp gets the door here, runs through itself, and then when it's done, it's going to send back, there it is, lamp finished, invoke this, and CP. So it's going to send back the object, the generic object CP. Here it is right here now in the lamp completed method. And so here I'm going to say, all right, well, that CP object is actually a door. So I'm going to say door, DR, just like up above, equals, in parentheses, door. And then I'm going to say cp.class2pass. And then I'm going to say dr.activate. There we go. And you may notice it's starting to autocomplete for me. That's because I have ReSharper on here. So if you don't have ReSharper as an extension up here, definitely check it out. It's by JetBrains. It is a very, very awesome, super useful tool, especially if you're learning code for the first time. It will autocomplete a lot of stuff for you that you may not have even realized was a thing or was something that you needed. All right, so now what I've got going on here is I've added this to my lamp. So now that when the lamp gets completed, it will activate the door. Now, one last thing I've got to do, you'll notice it's kind of like grayer here than the rest of these yellows. That's ReSharper letting me know that I don't actually have anything referencing it, right? So what I need to do is come up here and say L.lamp finished, and then it's going to be plus equals, and we're going to say lamp completed. There we go. So now what I've done here is I've made an event, all right? So this lamp finished event listener, let me come over here so you can see it. There we go, or event handler, I guess. This event handler is now listening, and it will fire off lamp completed method, which is down here, the lamp completed method, once the lamp is completed, okay? And that lamp completed won't actually complete until I do the stuff over here in the lamp. So let's go ahead and test this out real quick. And if you hear that scratching, that's my dog. He threw his toy in the corner and he can't get it. So he is freaking out a little bit. I'm sorry about that. I'll help him out in just a second. We're going to test this out first, so he can wait. Fido can wait. All right, so which prop do you want to try? So now I've got a couple different props to try. Of course, the lamp is not active, so I can't do that. So I'm going to go to the cabinet first. Now, remember, we didn't put any logic either for the door. So if I select the door, it's either going to give me an error or it's not actually going to do anything for me. In fact, let's take a look and see. There we go. Yeah, it doesn't have anything for me. Okay, but because it's technically not active right now. But what I am going to do is the cabinet. Cabinet activates the dresser. Dresser now looks for a code. The code is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the lamp is activated. So if I go to the lamp, it wants to know if I finish the lamp. If I type in yes, then that finishes the lamp. And now the door is open. Boom, just like that. And what was cool about that is that, let me exit out of there. What was cool about that was that I didn't have to do anything really special other than just add in an extra choice for the user to input and an extra method here at the end to tell what to do once the next prop in the sequence or the previous prop in the sequence is once it's completed to activate the door afterwards. And so what that means is that I can just add in another class if I wanted to, something else that can be activated when the door gets opened. Okay, and I just keep on adding those objects and adding these event listeners up here. Really, all the changes that I need to make are right here in the program. Okay, that's the whole thing. The reason I made the door is because I didn't have it in the first place. But let's say I brought in another prop that somebody else wrote the code for. As long as that prop has a start and an activate in it, or at least an activate, then I can just add in right here in the program all the things that are necessary in order to activate that prop wherever I want to. And I can change this order as well too without actually knowing what each one of those things does. So in this way, my class passer object is acting kind of like an interface, and my event handlers are treating it like an interface where they don't really know what they're passing back and forth. They just know that it's an object, and then I turn that object back into the class that I want it to be, that I know it's supposed to be, and then I can activate that thing. So that's kind of a cool thing, I think, that C# is capable of doing. I know with other programming languages like C++, for instance, you've got to have external software, external programs to do event handlers and things like that. Like, for instance, at my work, we use MQTT as the event service for each one of the rooms. But in this case, C# can handle basically the whole thing all in one spot, which I think is kind of cool. Now, actually putting this into real practice in an actual escape room might be a completely different story, but right now, as a proof of concept, it's here. It works. So anyways, hopefully that was kind of informative and helpful to you. Again, as I mentioned in my last video, if you missed it, Tim Corey is the guy who he's got tons and tons of YouTube videos on all of this stuff, and he goes into way more detail than I ever will, just because I'm trying to showcase the programs and what they can do and what I've done. He will actually teach you how to do all that stuff. So that's where I learned a lot of things, as well as from, as I mentioned, Mosh Hamadami and other Udemy courses too. I don't get paid or sponsored by them. I just like to promote things that help me. Those two guys definitely a big help, and there's plenty of others out there too. Those are just the two that come to mind right now. But anyways, if you're looking for the source code here, go onto my GitHub, look at CS Mosh Advanced, and this is lesson 21, props and events. But if you look through all these things, I've got tons and tons of different things to look through, and some of these will be featured in future videos maybe, but if not, just take a look at them and use whatever you want to. It's no big deal. So anyways, that's that, and hope to see you in the next video whenever that ends up being posted.